Ethan, I was just looking at our headshots. We both have the same, like, very generic headshot. Anyway, good morning, good evening, as the case may be, around the world. We again have an episode where we've got Ethan over in, are you in Spain today?
I'm in Spain right now, yeah.
Nice. I'm over in California, and we have Sisla in the back over in India, so fully spanning the globe here. Thank you very much for joining us today, Ethan. But before we get into that, let me just go ahead and thank our sponsors real quick. We have Sommelier.Finance. If you go to app.sommelier.finance today, you can check out the easiest way to add liquidity to Uniswap v3. And we are launching a mainnet here soon. So expect to hear quite a bit more about that. And we will have a lot of press coming out about that soon. And I'd also really like to thank the OmniFlix Network. Sisla and team there have been producing conversations with Jack since we started, and I couldn't do it without him. In addition, OmniFlix Media Network makes a very cool SDK-based blockchain. They just completed the largest Tendermint testnet, I think, in history, with over 700 participants. So they will be launching a mainnet soon as well. So exciting stuff all around. And speaking of launching mainnets, we have Ethan Frey here from the Confio team. Thank you for joining us today, Ethan.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Great to see you again.
Yeah, you as well. Ethan and I've known Ethan for a few years now, and I think we met for the first time at Interchain Berlin, like most of the Cosmos folks. And you were working on something else back then, but that was kind of the genesis of CosmWasm and the current effort that you're doing now. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about your background and what you're working on at Confio?
Sure. My background, I've been basically programming web stuff, when it wasn't really separated. You're doing front and back and everything that turned into API services. And then there was just, single page apps and API services, databases, message queues, whole backend systems. And from that, got excited about blockchain really. Around 2014, someone finally convinced me it was not just digital gold. There's something much more. And it was like when Ethereum was bubbling up, and the first things I found were Ethereum bubbling up and Tendermint. And I thought it was amazing. I saw Tendermint as like Eris Industries was using this, Eris DV. I was like, wow, this is amazing. You can build your own blockchain and go so fast. It's so nice. And yeah, so that was really where I got into it. And I started banging around and stuff 2016, just playing around. And January 2017, I started at the Cosmos team.
For technologists at that time, looking at blockchain, I think a lot of us looked and we saw Bitcoin and we were like, this thing's kind of lame. What else is there here? And, folks like yourself found Tendermint. Yeah, the Eris DB team, that is way back in the day.
I started programming Tendermint 06. This is personal stuff. And that was even a year after the Eris team.
Wow. I think the first Tendermint version I saw was 24. So you started at the Tendermint team. What were you working on at Tendermint when you started there?
I came in with the IVL tree, working on that one. Speed there. A bunch of random stuff. I started, I think the LCD was my creation.
Oh, wonderful.
I was trying to say we need amino support for the JavaScript app to have a JavaScript app to CLIs. And so the only way to do that is have like a REST box that we communicate that would translate and go. As a stopgap measure to get a real protocol or real JS support for amino, which never happened.
Man, Ethan, you and I have been on that story for a number of years.
Yeah. And yeah, so I worked on that stuff. And then I really got into base app, which was before Cosmos Decay was there as base app. So I built the 0.5 version, got out, and then started trying to implement the first version of IBC based on the very vague white paper. And then I built the Cosmos Decay. I basically built that one out 07, 08. If you look at that as my code. It actually resembles much more like Cosmos Decay 44 than it does like, the ones you've used before.
That's very true. Yeah, that code underwent quite a few changes. You were also working on a similar sort of build your own blockchain protocol for a while, right?
Yep, Weave. So I went through there and actually started the Cosmos Decay, and then kind of got stalled because of committee, I would say, and discussions. Then I started working on the IBC white paper, kind of specifying it. Kind of before ICS 20 people, I basically had ICS 20 spec. And somehow lots of discussion about stuff, felt it wasn't going anywhere, and went off to make my own blockchain. So I built Weave, which was another SDK, the other Cosmos SDK. That was in 2018. It had Protobuf as a basis. It had a much simpler, no multi-store, much simpler message services. We had upgrade, like a per module upgrade. So you could actually launch a new version and not enable the feature, and then have one transaction to switch on version 1 to version 2 on a module per module basis. I think it's much more like having CosmWasm now. And we built a bunch of stuff on that. We had a Weave.js, which eventually became something else. IOV used that stuff, and it was basically a JavaScript library that could talk to blockchain directly over Tendermint RPC. And I was probably the only user of Tendermint RPC at that time because I reported so many bugs on it. Everyone else using LCD, and I was like, RPC is broken. You can't search on stuff. That indexing is wrong here. This command doesn't work. There's a WebSocket connection. I was like the only one using WebSockets because I was just like putting so many bug reports on stuff. Like no one's using it because it's fine. LCD is what they're using. But yeah, that was 2018. I was on that. In 2019, we built out governance, multi-sig stuff, pretty much like the groups we have now coming into the SDK. And we built out our own Chrome extension, like Kepler. And that was into early 2019. But I would say there's some issues with that the business side, and we never got traction anywhere, even though we had amazing tech. And I met a bunch of amazing people there, and eventually said, I'll go back to the Cosmos guys. That's where everyone wants to go.
Yeah. And so that was kind of the beginning of Confio and the team that you're building now.
Yeah. So basically, I left IOV. Starname is now Starname. So we built a bunch of really cool stuff there that had a really cool stack. And but didn't seem to, it was moving in some, I don't know why. So I think everything was kind of hitting things. That was also the time that the AIB was crashing together. I think 2019 was also this year of crashes and internal conflicts. Crypto winter is hard on everyone. Stuff happened. Everyone was having issues there. So it didn't really move. So I said, screw this. I'm just going to go off and do my own thing. I don't know what I'm doing. I went off and I was trying to pitch POE, proof of engagement, at that point, which didn't really get much traction. And at Hackathon Berlin 2019, we built out this. Jonathan Yehan from Thea, now Informal Systems, who did a lot of the Rust coding there, showed me a bunch of Rust, and worked with Aaron also from Region, Shane from Stakebird, and Pedro from Wallet Connect. It was an amazing team. And we built out kind of the first groups module and CosmWasm contracts in 2 days. It was pretty crazy. It really was. It was like looking at what the SDK is today back 2 years ago with that demo. And, a few notes from that. That was one of the most amazing collection of engineering talent that we've seen in one room in quite a long time. I think that that's about the only time when we've had enough Cosmos validators together to meet space, collude, and simple the network, which was a common joke that weekend. But also, in a hackathon full of just unreal projects from the folks that Ethan's mentioning, like that team was stacked. We had a couple other teams that were completely stacked as well. And that CosmWasm demo, I think your comment was, I can put a WASM VM on top of Tendermint in a weekend. Like, why not just try it? And, kind of wild and awesome that you've kind of carried it forward into a product. I think some of the biggest issues that you've solved in CosmWasm that over sort of the EVM and some of the other WASM implementations out there are around contract upgradability. And if you look at the API for CosmWasm, you kind of deploy code and then you create contracts from the code, and that gives this ability to upgrade. What are some of the other things that, while you were developing CosmWasm, were really challenging, or you ran into issues with? Yeah, well, challenging. That's funny. I was going to say the design. I think Aaron a lot for the design, first of all. So I think one of the great things we solve is reentrancy. So his design is actually some ideas I had before, and I think he really nailed it though on the whole design. Return messages is active model, confuses people, but it avoids reentrancy attacks. So we avoid the whole class. 70% of the Ethereum attacks are based on reentrancy, and we avoid a whole class of bugs by design. So I think that was a really cool design. I thank Aaron for that one. Still, that came out in the first time. My hard things were there is basically wiring it up. So first of all, I had these contracts that only could do things; they couldn't look outside themselves. And allowing them to look into, query other nodes, call into other projects, but then query things and how they interact with their contracts. And it was interesting wiring everything up. That was really the hardest part, I think. The other one was learning a bunch of Rust and wiring between WASM into Rust and then Rust into Go. So there's a lot of plumbing going on there. And that's been probably the biggest source of bugs we found. Most people haven't found them. We've managed to find most of these things before they've gone anywhere. But they're like, using unsafe code. It's basically dropping a C to talk between two things in two different languages. And you drop in a C, you drop all the safety concerns of either compiler or any checks, and using really basically unmanaged memory at that point. Because, hey, all managed memory here give you a pointer to it, and you're supposed to use it and release it. So we've had some memory leaks on that before, which we fixed now. I think the last one is fixed on 0.15 CosmWasm. We found one in iterators. But yeah, there was getting that good was a really challenge. So I learned a lot in it. And so it's one thing to get to work, another thing to work it well. FFIs, crossing language boundaries is really a tricky thing.
Yeah, that's super hard. I know the Agoric team has done a bunch of work on that as well. But I remember right when you were starting, you were just the WASM VM that you were using. It was like you worked on it for a weekend and you immediately had about 10 bugs open on that repo. So maybe we back up just a bit. We kind of covered your background quite a bit in getting up to Confio, but tell me, what is Confio and what are you guys building there?
So Confio is based on, in Spanish means I trust, and it's based on basically confidence, trust. And that was basically bringing back to why in the blockchain, it was building trust. I don't want to build trustless systems. I want to trust full systems. Places allow you to trust other people. So I don't want, there's a lowest common denominator where you can build a bunch of independent actors that have no trust in each other and you can't collude and you can't attack each other. And great, that's great, right? So we have this way that, if I have a box where I can put $1 in and you put €1 in and then they open the box and I get that thing out there and we can't cheat each other, that's great, right? We have this thing. It's a very good bottom level. Beyond that, we can build things we can trust each other. We can build levels of trust. I think that's one of the big things you want to look at is what levels of trust we can build there, what levels of collaboration, of governance, of community, of collaboration, communication can we build on the blockchain. And that was really what got me inspired about blockchain, of taking what we have as trust, real world trust, and multiplying it on a blockchain. Not assuming you have no real world trust, assuming you have communities and multiplying it. So the first product that got me into blockchain was the idea of community currencies. If you know these, they're usually if they're not paper, some admin on a PHP site to track everyone's balances, and people will mint their things. I give a yoga here, and I get some money here, and I sold this chair over here, and they use their own money. They have an own money supply. It's been going around for decades. And 10 years ago, those PHP sites, right? And still from now, or paper. That scales up to a little bit of money while you trust the guy, right? 10,000 maybe, right? But how much you trust the guy running the thing, right? So you can scale that up to businesses and millions. But blockchain lets you do that. So that's based on real world trust, but it has a bottleneck, which is basically horrible. So take that real world trust and actually multiply blockchain is the idea of Confio. That's a fundamental idea of Confio.
This idea of community currencies is so strong in Cosmos. Like, yourself, I think Ethan Buckman, who I had on last week, obviously talks about that a whole ton. But also Alessio from Tendermint, what they're building with Cosmos Cash. I did a couple of shows with them recently. And, that's one of those ideas that you run into in Cosmos more than anywhere else. And I think it's, not only true to history, like people have had these kind of community currencies and these social currencies all throughout history. But I think something we need more than ever today, all these online communities that we're creating, we need a way to store value within these communities and exchange that within them. And, blockchains and community currencies on top of blockchains is a great way to do that. So with trust and confidence being kind of the high level goal of Confio and building better governance and community currency tooling, so that's kind of the high level idea. And then CosmWasm is the implementation coming up. So what products are you guys working on right now, and where are you in your roadmap?
Yeah, so we have a lot of things going on. So this is what I want to do, and a lot of times I want the idea, but there's no tools for it right now. The tools don't exist. So we've focused on tooling. So what you've heard from Confio so far is CosmWasm. I'm sure everyone's heard about that one. CosmJS, maybe you've heard of that. That was a lot of starting. So very thanks to IOV for donating much of that code. The ideas that converted and turned into some of that code, and a lot of the ideas turned into CosmJS now. Then we also are building a TS3 layer. And I'm also contributing somewhat to IBC spec development, like ICS 27 discussions and the fee management stuff. I'm working on that. So these I see as base levels of what we need to really have a very interesting system, a really secure system. We have great front-end libraries. We need super easily configurable relayers, and we need a smart contracting platform for Cosmos, because the Go things are awesome, but sometimes you want to upgrade it on the fly and allow open people to upload their other stuff. So how can you make partnerships with 100 businesses on your system? So some people want pure Go code, some want smart contracts, some want a mixture of the two. So I think that is really what we found a huge traction. And the amazing thing, CosmWasm got us funding. So that got us funding. And so I actually got some grants from first Terra, and then from the Cosmos Hub, and then from the ICF last year. And that was amazing. It allowed me to build a team up. And so that was saying, hey, we're going to build a bunch of amazing open source tech that everyone can use, for the entire Cosmos community. And it'll provide a basis for anything we want to build too. And that is how I could actually get the funds to pull together a team, pull a bunch of people I knew, and then start hiring people I don't know. But awesome programmers together to actually start building stuff. And so far that has been Confio. We are wrapping up, I feel wrapping up like a 1.0 CosmWasm, where that's not going to be a focus much anymore. We'll continue on it, but like it's stable. It's getting to what we're happy with, very happy with, and very stable. And moving on to Tgrade, which is actually our first attempt at a product to bring these ideas into fruition. So Tgrade Network is Tgrade Finance is a blockchain aimed at basically regulatory friendly stuff. And the idea here brings governance. So I want to mention it briefly, and we can go into it more later. But the general idea of Tgrade is, first of all, we have proof of engagement, which is it's kind of a reputation plus proof of stake together. And I'll get to that if you want to, or another show. It's a whole show. But we are basically building trusted circles, which allow people to manage it. So you could, for example, a trusted circle could be community currency. You could have a group of 5 to 10 people.
This is like the web of trust idea, right?
Sort of. It's more centralized in the web of trust. We say you could have, for a bank, let's imagine this. You could have 5 banks be the voting members of Trusted Circle, and they can point all the clients as non-voting members of the Trusted Circle. They've then said all these people have done KYC in England, for example, right? There are 5 English banks. Mm-hmm. And now we can offer financial products. They're only valid there with KYC and AML checks. And we can offer them and say, now this thing, we just put a simple whitelist check on it. And we use our Trusted Circle as the whitelist check on all these financial products. And we can launch regulated financial products on the blockchain and use these things. And they can take that same product and use an AMM if they want to, and use other options, other places, and maybe use them places we didn't intend them to be used. But we guarantee everyone holding this new security issue is going to be on our list. So these people can trade. These people can make contracts and trade between themselves, not just through us. So it's not centralized, but that security, if the bank is issuing security, we know that everyone holding security has been whitelisted, because we just put whitelist on the security, and the trading of it then can be peer-to-peer and using any sort of DeFi protocols on it. This becomes really, really interesting now with the latest US stories about the infrastructure bill.
Well, I mean, not only that, the European regulations, the MENA, or whichever ones.
That came out last fall, like November or something. That was really interesting. They're really going towards it slower, saying we want to have this. We have a 3-year period where it's kind of experimental stuff. We're supporting people building out regulatory friendly DeFi, but it needs to be regulated. They weren't as hard fist. The U.S. infrastructure bill is much harder fist and makes people scared. Whereas I think the European
shocker, America, go figure.
Eric to start building stuff, and the US is like, SEC said no way. So yeah, I think really people are looking at this and say they're interested in it now. They really have to consider it. So the banks were requiring this before they got into DeFi, and the DeFi people realized it actually matters. So this whole thing about KYC and that is kind of AML is kind of built into it. And we said we're not AMLing you. We're not allowing one central place. We allow people to build self-sovereign communities on our thing. And each one of those can actually add financial checks on different instruments and different use DeFi primitives with those.
This is a setup where you would register to become a credential issuer on the chain. Credential issuers kind of
anyone can be their own credential issuer. Your credential has no value. So I can make a circle, me and you can make a circle, and we can make a list of people, and they can apply to us. Great, we issue a credential. A community in southern Spain can make that thing, and the Bank Lloyds of London can make another one. And those are all valid. The point is my credential worth anything? Is it people accept my whitelist? If they accept my token, is it worth anything? The same thing is your ERC20 token worth anything? The code is the same. It depends what you've built behind it. So the credentials, same thing. We expect there to be lots of different credentials and many of them to be usable, and many of them not to be. So we're not centralizing at all.
Yeah.
It's definitely meant to be build a bunch of communities and select for groups that within them, and then combining is really very interesting. I think when you say, hey, we want to do some cross-border stuff, what's the union of people that are able to trade in the London financial instruments and the Singapore authorities accept them both and have gone to both of those, and maybe that union of people can actually do some very interesting cross-border trades, and make the regulators happy that everything is being controlled or not going into money laundering laws. So,
that's I think that model of sort of like decentralized credential issuance is going to kind of predominate. It is a little bit like a web of trust model, but within the credential issuers and then the sort of like non-voting members of each credential circle are, sort of taking advantage of that or beneficiaries of that. Very cool model. So that's what you guys are launching with the Confio chain. Is that going to be that kind of implies that there's more of a governance gating on the CosmWasm contracts, or are folks going to be kind of able to deploy their own contracts as they see fit?
It's open. We're not gating governance at all. So we will have our own on-chain governance. We want to have a robust on-chain governance and oversight committee. We call it oversight community, actually, to keep track of it, not just validating, not supposed to say yes, new change of parameters upgrade, but supposed to be a little more engaged. We'll allow anyone to launch their own financial primitives and launch their own credentials, launch their own tokens if you want to. We want to encourage people to use certain things. It's still a discussion internally. I think there is a way, and you can configure it. There's no gating, but you can allow governance to force migrate contracts. You can enable this, right? So you can enable. You require governance or require individuals to do it. But say individuals can do it, but governance, for example, can force migrate contract, which means if something that we think a scam, we could be able to shut it down. And you can migrate it to code, which would do an orderly shutdown of the scam, right? So, hey, let's find the investors are and give back the money to the investors, right? So you could do that. I think we haven't finally decided that one. I think that's an interesting thing we'd have. So we can find if there's something bad, we can shut. We're not going to block people. People do anything they want to. If anything is getting big and really ugly, we want to have the right to shut this down.
It'd be nice to be able to shut Plus Token down.
So what down?
It would have been nice to be able to shut Plus Token down back in 2018.
So, but yeah, it'll be slow. A governance process, 2-week voting period, and everything else. There's nothing's, you have time to liberate, and we want to do it orderly. But the idea is, if people are running Ponzi schemes, that we would say, hey, no. And the other thing that I particularly think is not a bad code, but I think is unstable, is, for example, flash loans. And if you get 100,000 of flash loan pool, it's not really an issue for me. If you have 50 million of flash loans and we can throw the market, double, triple the values on these AMMs, that's very dangerous. And that a lot of the DeFi attacks are not attacks for attack. They're basically based on using oracles and finding arbitrage, because if you have access to capital equal the entire liquidity pools of all these different things, you can do crazy swings on markets. So I think it's dangerous, actually. I think those are unstabilizing influences. So these are them things I would not want to have large flash loan personally. So I'd have to vote. I'd make appeal to the oversight committee if I saw a large flash loan thing on our chain, for example. But again, that's a vote and discussion, and it's not for me to make decisions. I would like to keep the ability for that to happen, and that would have to be a community discussion about what Tgrade actually belongs, what belongs and what doesn't belong in it. But it's more like the real world. You can do anything you want to, but the police might come later and say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that.
So, I think that one of the things that's awesome about CosmWasm is you guys have seen a lot of adoption. Not only your team working on this, but also the Terra team. There's a community effort to stand up a CosmWasm chain. I think there's a couple of other projects that have also adopted it. What do you think? Ethan, you also mentioned this earlier, that you build a lot of developer tooling. What do you think makes for good developer tools? And what do you think about when you're building developer tooling?
Wow. Extensibility, stable APIs, and good documentation and extensibility.
Stable APIs is one that you are more of a stickler for than almost anyone else I know, and it's very valuable.
So we've broken APIs, but they're usually relatively small changes, and we go migration every time. And that's why we're not calling 1.0, because we want stable APIs. You absolutely need them for WASM contracts. They're immutable contracts run for 2 years in different versions. So we need to have the stable APIs. And I think they really, as more people build on them, you really need them. So, I think the Cosmic TK have picked an API and stuck with it for a while, and then, experiment. Because it's hard for people to follow it. It's really hard to have all these different versions and follow things when they're constantly moving, building on shifting sands.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing some reporting work right now, and I run validators across a number of different chains, and I think the number of different SDK versions I'm supporting on the reporting tool is everywhere from 0.37 all the way up to 0.42. Vastly different pieces of software.
Yep. The 39 to 40 jump was big, but some of the other ones are also the 37, 38, 39 were all 37 is a pretty big step too, actually.
37 to 39 was a huge one. That was an underrated upgrade that kind of paved the way for Stargate. But that was a lot of breaking changes there. It's a funny one.
No, we want to have this. And so what we're looking for now as CosmWasm is, and so I like to have the good Java experience, and I'm working. So Simon, I think props to Simon, who I think is a genius.
Shout out Simon.
Really programming genius, but also, the German stickler for correctness. So, I will write something I think is great, and then he'll go, no, dot the I's, cross the T's, and we need to double check these things, and clean it up, fix the names, and do it. So, I can take ideas, and he can really, really make them solid. What we consider ready for launch is probably a few levels above other people consider ready for launch. And so our 0.10 has been on two mainnets, at least two mainnets. And we're saying is not ready 1.0 yet. So we have released, there's an article, maybe you want to read it here, when CosmWasm 1.0, it's a big question. We released the CosmWasm 0.16 last week, and we should launch probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the 0.18 WasmD. That is, we have an RC4 out now. It's basically done. It's minor tweaks. And we will be launching a PebbleNet testnet for those. That is 1.0.
PebbleNet. I like PebbleNet.
That. It's bang on it, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of rocks. So throw it around, and that will be 1.0 RFC. That is last chance for comments. We will consider that basically we're done with 1.0. If people have last chance, we want people to put on testnets, connect IBC to it, try IBC contracts, which is one of the areas we have not tested heavily. We have used it, we have not tested heavily. IBC to IBC contracts in different CosmWasm chains. We want try stuff out and bang on stuff. And if there are any bugs, issues, things arising, architecture, we had that last period to do it. And if not, hopefully we'll launch this PebbleNet testnet next week or end of next week, maybe. Other people hopefully launch other 0.18 based, 0.16, 0.18 based chains, and we connect them, play with them. And mid-September, we will make the last little adjustment, if anything left, or hopefully nothing, and call it 1.0 beta.
Nice.
1.0 beta is finished for me. It hasn't been audited. That's why there's a beta there. Beta does not mean you're going to change it before 1.0. It means this is not audited yet, so we call it a beta. Just put beta on there. No, I mean that at that point we'll commit to the version. We'll commit to stability. If you have 1.0 beta and you launch that on a mainnet or anywhere, and you launch a 1.0 beta contract on it, we will have support on 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.7, 1.25, whatever. Until 2.0, and we'll look for 1.0 to 2 upgrade path if we ever get to 2.0. So this is basically saying once you build a 1.0 beta chain and a 1.0 beta contract, you will have able to run that contract, upgrade the chain, and that contract is still running it. So those contracts will run forever, and that chain will be able to upgrade without breaking old contracts. Terra is doing amazing work to go from 0.10 to 1.0. They're rewriting, doing crazy stuff. It's amazing work. It's really hard. I don't want anyone to do it again. They are really first adopters. Thank them for doing that. And they've profited a lot from the DeFi boom on their chain. And they're doing it, but that should not be for everyone to do. I
don't think they would have done it again if they had. I think they would have figured out a different upgrade path. Highly painful, but props to them for actually doing it, because wow. So also, I do want to just, before we get to some audience questions here, of which we have a number because folks are super excited about CosmWasm. I do want to sort of circle back to one thing you said, talking about 1.0, which is IBC contracts and contract to contract IBC interactions. When we're talking about like true interoperability between multiple chains and this sort of like money Legos type experience in Ethereum DeFi, this is the way that you build exactly that from a user experience standpoint in Cosmos. Right now, IBC is this very kind of simple protocol where we're sending tokens back and forth between chains, and then you can interact with the primitives on each chain. That's great. and that's going to work for the vast majority of applications. But building more complex user experiences where there's one user signature and a number of interactions kick off across a number of different chains, you're going to need this, chain-to-chain, contract-to-contract connection with IBC, and that's really what CosmWasm provides. That's a very next level feature that is not going to shine for another couple of years, because I think people already have trouble with the mental model of IBC. And like, while we have more folks adopting and people are understanding a little bit better, the simple token transfer use case like clicks for people immediately. Very easy to explain. These cross-chain contract calls are much more complex, but much more powerful as a primitive. And I'm really looking forward, in the same way in 2019, Ethan's like, got a CosmWasm. In 2021, like Ethan's got a cross-chain contract calls. And, this, as he mentioned, it's still early. Folks need to get out there and test it. If you're on the Juno testnet, if you're on the Tgrade testnet, if you're on the Terra Columbus 5 testnet, give this stuff a try. Test it out. We need to get this stuff in production so that, these truly wild applications can kind of come to life. Okay. So we've got quite a few questions here. So I'm going to start from the top here. Rob asks, hey, Ethan, what is the role of the delegator in Tgrade? Since there will be PoE, which I do actually want to do another show on, and how PoE is better than POS to improve decentralization. So if there's too much there, just try to give a high level answer. But
that's huge.
Yeah.
We have no delegators in Tgrade. I can go. This is a whole topic. There's an article on Medium too. It's only validators. So the people running are validators. Delegation, I think, actually, it's great for the DeFi and raising the value of the token, stake, and participating. It does not in practice. It does not in practice seem to increase stability of networks because, hey, if delegators are just looking for the best returns, they're not actually doing due diligence and picking people to vote on them. A lot of delegators throwing money at the best returns or the best name. So I think, and the validator's personal stake is much lower than the actual stake. If it's 70% of token is staked, only maybe 10% or 5% is self-staked, which I think is really strong. So Thorchain made a good argument. You can read their website. They argue that delegation actually hurts security of the network. And I believe something else similar. So we're not having delegations on validators. I think that all the money should go to validators and people engage the network. So PoE involves in this one. It involves us to basically, we add curves on it because we have some engagement point rewards. We can actually have nonlinear curves to slope off on money to voting power because it can't sybil it because we have engagement to gate it. It's a more complex story. I can explain a lot longer. That's one thing I like about it. There's whole articles on it and we can have a whole show on it. So that's what I think helps decentralization. And I think the point is rewards will go to the validators running it and not to all the delegators. If the people were delegators on Atom, Cosmos, they should be liquidity pool providers on Tgrade because DeFi primitives will provide you great returns. We can have lots of DeFi primitives provide great yields, and your yield should not be derived from providing. You should not be investing in the security network getting yields unless you're actually providing that security. So people actually running those validators are providing security, they get paid. If you want yields, go for liquidity pools. Go for
interesting. I like this. That's actually a really interesting argument that I had not heard before. Okay, another great question from Aditya. Hey, Ethan, do you think smart contract frameworks will evolve to support real-world contracts that can be configured similar to DocuSign?
This is something I kind of doubt, but let me go into it. I've been involved in these talks since 2017.
Yes, I think I've talked with you about this before.
Yeah, and so I know some people that are into the lawyers working with this, and they've been two ways have failed. One way is trying to take a real world contract written in English or another language and convert it into have automatically converted into code. That does not work. There's too many ambiguities in language. Other people take code and try to convert that into an English contract, and that does not really work too because it doesn't match it. One approach that I've seen people try to do, which may bear fruit, is have some sort of meta language, which is a limited kind of English looking language, but some building blocks that you use to define a contract. This can be compiled down to either Solidity code on one side or compiled down to English on the other side. So you can kind of specify the thing in a very high level way that will then make code on one side and English on the other side. It does seem to allow some set of defining a set of documents that have, here's the meaning you have, and you can define another language, they have DSL basically for that. That might bear fruit.
I don't think it is really going to be it's going to be a while till that gets together. That technology may eventually work, but I think it's definitely different because you have to have something can force of on-chain. You really oracles and real world bindings. They're really much stronger oracles we have on-chain to make this really enforceable. Because most of the
we got to get lawyers. We got to get lawyers using Git first. That's never going to happen. All right, and one more question here, Promid, who thank you again for asking some questions today. Hey, Ethan and Jack, with Tgrade, are you bringing regulation to the experience of being a community member in the current structure of an organization? Or is it a case where current social structures are accommodating to fit current regulated environments? I'm not sure I understand the question, but Ethan, go ahead and take a stab at it if you do.
Okay. I think we're not trying to change anything per se. We're not trying to demand people do different things. It's an invite only, it's an opt-in framework. So there are two ways of opting in. One opt-in is you would have, for example, say banks that want to create a trusted circle. They will then create this artificial circle based on their community, their clients, which is not community. And that set of clients is a group of people that can, say, trade between each other. And then they can allow a number of securities that will not be legal in DeFi world because they require AML KYC. So they do that. That's one target. And that's probably the first target because these are the people that have figured out already. These are the people that are looking for regulations or want regulations, right? The DeFi world has been hating regulations. We have not been targeting them. We will probably moving more towards that soon with the infrastructure bill. And for that, you have actually a community of people holding stuff. They're not checked at all. This would be opt-in. What I could see here happening is this. You'll have someone with their target, was their protocol, TerraSwap, for example, or Anchor, or some other amazing new low Terra, some pool that's working on Terra, right? They have CosmWasm contracts. It's totally no KYC. It's working. They like it. But they're worried about regulations. And the members that are not living in Korea or in Singapore are worried more about regulations than others. So they say, hey, we'd love to take our idea, bring it on to Tgrade and allow an opt-in community. And so maybe they set their own, how they define the checks, they define it. So they can basically whitelist that as they want to. They can do any AML checks they want to. They can do anything they want to and say, hey, we've done enough KYC or checks that we are happy with it. And they will then be able to say, hey, we will basically make a system for our social structure. We have a social structure we like to bring over here. We'll bring over and we'll allow these people into it. And we allow our own rules. How to become a new member of our group. You make your own rules. If you want to pick according to the regulations of European AML, or if you want to put US KYC, or if you want to pick, I know this guy, he'd find them party is your rule for getting in your group. Any rules you want to. So we allow these trusted circles to have any sort of backing social structure. It's not on-chain. On-chain, we just define who gets to choose, who gets to join. And off-chain, you can have any sort of social rules for it. So I really do think our first target is banks. No regulations, want regulations, and want to be able to use DeFi, regulate DeFi. And I think our second target, when this gets into the minds of people in the DeFi space, is how can I do a minor tweak on my protocol and allow it to be KYC friendly and not get in trouble with SEC and not get in trouble with the authorities? How can I? What's the minimum thing you do? I want to keep the spirit of my protocol, and this way you can define your own trusted circle with your own rules and your own idea of doing it. So I think it can be used both ways. It's not. Really look forward to that.
This brings to mind that crypto has always, and crypto as in cryptography back in the 80s and 90s, and as in like file sharing back in the early 2000s, and as again blockchains now, always found a way to kind of flow around regulations and end up working sort of in tandem with them. And this does feel like a moment where we as an industry are looking at this oncoming wave of regulation, and folks like Ethan and a bunch of other people are looking at that and saying, how do we accommodate that, stay true to our values, and continue to build and produce this software that helps these communities? And what you're building at CosmWasm is a great example of that. So that we did go a little bit over. So thank you, Ethan, for starting a little bit late, which I very much appreciate, and going a little bit over. And before we wrap here, I do just want to say thank you to our sponsors, Sommelier Finance. Please go to app.sommelier.finance today to try out the easiest way to add liquidity to Uniswap v3. I will have a new spiel on this probably very soon. So stay tuned for that. And then also OmniFlix.network, launching their mainnet soon. Please go check it out. And if you want to be a validator, go join one of their test nets. Ethan, do you have any last words for us before we cut today?
Thank you very much for having us. And yeah,
Thank you.
I think it's amazing. You're right about the keeping true to roots. And I'll say, after Napster got crushed, you got BitTorrent on one side, you got Spotify on the other. And you can have them both. They're not either or, you have them both.
Yep. You know, Bram Cohen's still contributing in this space. He recently built up a proof of space-time and was working on building a blockchain on top of that. And, you know, all of these old ideas are new again. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And we'll see you guys next week. Do we have a guest yet for next week? Let me see. No guest yet for next week, but we will have one, and we will see you back here. Thank you, everyone, and see you guys later.
Thank you.